Thank you very much for your kind invitation. Dear friends, I very much appreciate to have been invited to this very special symposium, and I will speak about the ESPN and the evolution of renal care for European children since 1967. I was given the topics to talk about collaborations and conferences, and several success stories of ESPN have already been published, and one of the publications dealt with the founding and the early history of ESPN. And let me put this into one word: ESPN has become a family with a lot of inner strength, which was responsible for the future successes in this subspecialty. The second publication dealt with demography of renal care, and it showed for the first time how children with kidney diseases were treated in different countries and what the workforces were. And there will be a new publication which Elena started recently, and we will compare the past data with the 2017 data on how the workforce developed in pediatric nephrology. She will give you some more detailed information during her opening ceremony. The third publication dealt with the success of the pediatric part of the EDTA registry, and a very, I think, very interesting publication summarized the first 20 years, and which was the kind of backbone of the treatment of children with kidney dialysis and with transplantation. Now, where do we stand today? I think there are a couple of challenges. Parts of the history of ESPN-initiated collaboration of pediatric nephrologists in Europe still have to be analyzed and to be written, such as the roles of the ESPN working groups. And I think this analysis should focus mostly on the topic on to what extent have new theories be put into practice in the different 53 European countries. There are still countries in Europe where children are not ideally treated. The other topic is the pre-Congress training sessions, which are probably another backbone of the training of young European colleagues coming from countries where the training is not very well institutionalized. I would also suggest to study the role of individual people starting international multi-center trials, because I have analyzed the congresses of ESPN since 1967, and I asked myself, why do we have annually one poster presentation of Tino syndrome? Why don't we collect the data from all patients with a Tino syndrome like it was done for the distal renal tubular acidosis? Collect the great number, like 50 different patients, and draw the conclusions from the different outcome of the disease before we publish 50 abstracts, which will never be published in a journal. So lastly, what is the role of cross-border renal care and research on the national nephrological service systems as an indicator of international social responsibility? I would very much encourage the ESPN Council to work on these 4 topics. Now, the main part of my presentation will deal with ESPN congresses. And in our paper on the dilemma of international pediatric congresses in Europe, general questions were put forward, and they were: do we have too many pediatric congresses in Europe, and are they overloaded with abstracts? Secondly, can international pediatric congresses provide greater value for less investment using more participative approaches with a focus on learning across borders and making a difference? My specific questions of ESPN congresses dealt with the following 3 questions. Firstly, how did the priorities of renal research change from 1967 till 2017? Secondly, how did renal science develop in 53 European countries? And thirdly, how did the focus of research change according to the underlying renal diseases of children? So let me start with the first ESPN Congress in 1967. That was the program. And the arrows show here Stuart Cameron as one of the speakers, and I thought that I would spot Dick White here, but unfortunately he is not with us. Some of the speakers are unfortunately no longer alive, some are, but their role in founding, their role in founding ESPN congresses and successful meetings is of great value. You remember the programs. My first congress was in 1973 in Štrbské Pleso in the High Tatra, which I remember as a very special meeting also. So, analyzing all abstracts from 1967 until 2017 meant to collect all program booklets. Thank you for those who helped me. And to read more than 8,500 abstracts myself. It spent a minimum of 2 minutes to understand the abstract and to put it into the electronic form. I was helped by 3 people only in entering the data, but the abstracts I had to read myself. So that made 2 minutes times 8,500, that is 17,000 minutes. And I started to calculate 8,500 minutes plus the coffee break. It's another probably 3,000 minutes. That makes 20,000 minutes. Dividing 20,000 minutes by 60, you end up with something like 360. 60 hours, dividing 60 hours by a working week of a daily work of 8 hours, that meant that I spent more than 40 days on creating the database. And you may say I could have done something more important than doing these analyses, which I think, and I was frustrated at the turn. But I started all this 10 years ago. And very recently I came across a book that the photo artist Ursus Wehrli published. In German it reads Die Kunst aufzuräumen. It's the art to clean and to clear up. I felt very comfortable with this topic. And he had worked in his office. So when looking down on the parking lot, he saw all the cars. And then he had the brilliant idea. He went down and he asked all the drivers to rearrange their cars. And in order to create a nice, systematic parking. And that's what came out. So he arranged them according to colors and to the size of the cars. And when I saw this, I said, oh, that's not too bad. It's something that you might also like to do. When reflecting overnight, I all of a sudden woke up with a nightmare saying, oh my goodness, when you give this talk, and people in the audience will get the feeling that Jochen wants to tell you how to submit their abstracts for future ESPN Congress. You will never be invited again. And then I was helped by another book. It's the Xenophobe's Guide to the Germans. In this book, there is a statement: the Germans pride themselves on their efficiency and Ordnung, which means order. And the translation of okay into German is alles in Ordnung. So I thought it also would give a rather bad impression if you want to tell people that you can do better and everything has to be arranged according to your point of view. So at that very moment I said, okay, I will provide you with the information and some kind of conclusion, but I will leave it up to you to draw your own conclusions, and I want to make you work. And you'll see this at the end, because what I'm going to show to you now will give us the chance to better understand the past. So, The coding system of abstracts to be put into the data bank on 50 years ESPN congresses started with the year code, very easy, 67, 2007. I apologize, I received the abstracts a bit late, and I did simply not manage to enter the 2017 data. The next code was the type of presentation. Number 1, state of the art. Number 2, symposium. 3, free communication. 4, poster. 5, other. Then the country code. That's interesting. 106 countries had sent speakers to ESPN congresses. And it's very interesting to see that analyzing the last 10 years, more speakers come from non-European countries than ever before. Obviously, ESPN congresses have become attractive for all people in the world. The next code was the primary renal disease code. You know the EDTA code with 100 different codes. I added another 21, so all in all, it's something like 125 different PRD codes. And this allows me to identify each individual kidney disease. So then I coded the part of the kidney, 1 to code 13. You may say, well, why? Glomerulus, okay, 6 urinary tract, 8 total kidney, 13 glomerulus, plus artery. So I made combinations. This code was entered in order to check plausibility of the results. Now then it's more specific. It's the type of the study, code 1 to 11. 1 means clinical description. 2, experimental, animal model or biological experiment. Diagnostic, therapeutic, genetic, multicentric study, or case report. And last but not least, the different medical specialties, subspecialties entered the codes 1 to 31. It is 1, embryology, obstetrics, neonatology, 2, physiology, 3, anatomy, 4, bioclinical, the chemistry and metabolism, 5, pharmacological, toxicology, 6, bacteriology, parasitology, 7, virology, etc. until 31. This is the code to remember. 7 different categories which were created in order to identify different aspects of renal diseases which were presented during congresses. Now, here are the results until 2016. 8,094 abstracts, 2% were state-of-the-art lectures, 10% symposia presentations, 20% free communications. So these 3 are oral presentations. Now we switch to posters. Almost 2/3 were poster presentations, others 2.5%. This includes working groups and so meeting the professor sessions. Now, this graphic shows you the geographical distribution of oral versus poster presentations. Here you have the top 5 countries, those countries who had sent more speakers than any other countries, so the rest is in red. As you can see, on the left side is the 3 oral types of presentations, state-of-the-art, symposia, free communication. Here, on the right side, is posters. Oral presentations represented 1/4 of all presentations if analyzing the whole period. And if you look at the different countries, you see that these 4 countries, Germany, France, United Kingdom, and Italy, had a higher rate of accepted oral presentations than the other countries, for instance, like Turkey or all the rest. So this may reflect quality of research. This may reflect other items which we have to analyze. We have to ask ourselves, why, how come? So here, the increase of poster presentations in relation to oral presentations is listed according to, yet not to countries, according to a different renal pathology. So blue is glomerulopathy, green is macroscopic urinary tract abnormalities, yellow means scarred kidneys, cystic kidneys, tubular interstitial diseases, other PRDs. And again, you have on the left graphic the early period, 1967 till 78. Here, the most recent period. Here, very few poster presentations. Here, dominating poster presentations. And if you compare this according to the different types of renal pathology, there was no much difference between oral and poster presentations. They reflect, obviously, the same importance. I will now concentrate on one disease which I have selected for obvious reasons. HUS was first described by Gasser and Émilie Gauthier in 1955. It took 13 years until some publications had appeared, among one of them, which was Leo Monens, one of the very first ones to find out that this is a very, very interesting disease. But if you go into PubMed and you want to read the first publications, there is no abstract available. You have to go to the library. So I say HUS is probably a little bit older than ESPN, which was founded in 1966, but why not taking HUS as the example on how ESPN and HUS discovery developed? Now, here you have the median annual number of presentations on HUS until 1989. Only one presentation. After 1989, it increased to 7. Then it was in 1994, 13 all of a sudden. Then it went back to 7, 18 in 2005, and since then there has been a steady increase with only one exception, and in the years 2012, 14, it was 41 presentations. Why? Why did it increase? HES was obviously an uninteresting disease in the late 60s, and it has become a very interesting disease in the recent years. I doubt that HUS has ever changed. It must have always had the same medical significance. But we saw it differently. So, here I have listed the part of the kidney that was studied, which is not uninteresting. It's 323 presentations, oral and posters. The glomerulus was in the center, but not only the glomerulus. It was also the combination of glomerulus plus artery, 24%, 71%, which is very interesting. And you remember, those who remember Turnus, who said there are two types of renal histopathology. There's a G type and there's an A type, including the arteries. This may not have remained a hypothesis for past years, but it was interesting to see that the coding system identifies how the disease was regarded. So how about the relation to the type of work? A means clinical, human, multicentric trial, registry, case reports. The vast majority, 50%, dealt with the description of the disease. Another 15% were obviously related to the genetic aspects, and only 6% were reviews. Now, how about the number of presentations and percentages according to the type of medical subspecialty? This is part 1 showing here. Here, embryology, 2 presentations. Obviously, very few experiences with the inherited type. Microbiology, parasitology, virology, this is 10%, is D plus HUS. Here, biochemistry, immunology, that's a role of complement, 25%. And then it comes to pharmacology, toxicology, to dialysis techniques, another 22%. So these are the foci, and the other 2 which are important, it's the epidemiology. 12% of patients were studied in registries or so, and another 13% related to comorbidities, extrarenal comorbidity of HUS. So that gives us now a kind of picture on how HUS was studied, and lastly, how was it presented during the congresses? Here, state-of-the-art lecture is the first row, symposia, free communication, poster, other. As you can see, it was 318 in total. Here you've got the different countries: the Netherlands, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Turkey, Belgium, Canada, all. The majority of presentations or abstracts were handed in by our colleagues from the Netherlands, UK, France, and Germany. If you look at the type of presentation, it's interesting that these first 5 countries represented the speakers during symposia. However, the state-of-the-art lectures were given twice by Canadian colleagues. The poster here is in the age of 20 posters per different country. So there is a kind of imbalance, and we must find out why. One answer would be there is a geographical, or we call this different geographical pathology of HUS. This is one explanation, but there are also different centers who may have brought science forward on who dominated, of course, clinical science. Now, the nephrological pattern of HUS in the 1980s, 1990s, and after the year 2000 is listed here. In the early days, 90s, the abstracts were rarely submitted to ESPN, and the foci of research were case reports and histopathology. Renal biopsy is no longer a diagnostic method for HUS. In the 1990s, HUS-oriented research activities increased and abstract doubled, which may be explained by, I still had no time to find out because I have to look into the original programs in order to find the solution. After 2000, HUS ranked among the most frequently presented syndromes and included mostly abstracts on atypical HUS, therapeutic modalities, extrarenal involvement of HUS. So, why using the ESPN Congress database? I think that many more analyses can be done to understand the success and the pitfalls of renal research on renal diseases of European children, such as nephrotic syndrome or the rare diseases. I think we shall also test if some of the results can be compared with the analysis of the ESPN renal replacement therapy registry. It's another interesting link that we can do. Now, there are more links that we can do. The database can also be used as an index for finding a specific historical aspect. I told you that we may have no aspects to early publications. Now, step 1 means identify the topic that you want to study and give it a corresponding code combination. Step 2, start the analysis and ask for the code numbers of those abstracts which may match with your question. Step 3, take the folder of ESPN programs and look for the abstracts. 4, read the abstract, check PubMed for a corresponding publication, or ask the authors for further specifications or for a copy of the published articles. That means going back and doing some historical work on how research developed on a given topic like nephrotic syndrome, or whatever you mean. Now, we must turn to a very important question. What is happening to the abstracts that were handed in and that were accepted? You know that approximately 3/4 of abstracts are accepted, 1/4 rejected. Now here, combining ESPN Congress presentations with PubMed listed publications in medical journals may clarify if the findings went successfully through other revision. So the proportion of subsequent full publications listed in PubMed according to the years before or after congresses, based on 48 free communications and 296 posters presented during the ESPN Congress in Bilbao. So 2002 was the Congress here. Three abstracts, and I have 5 minutes. 3 publications or 3 abstracts were already published before. But as you can see, there's a time delay, and some publications may come out only 5 years later. So, according to the analysis of the year 2002, only 1/3 of present abstracts were subsequently published. What happened to the other thirds? Other questions? What were the differences between published and unpublished abstracts? Geographic factors, methodological factors, PRDs? Well, I think, what could ESPN do to improve the current dilemma of abstracts left unpublished? could ESPN develop a strategy to further improve quality of renal research by teaching science and training of young pediatric nephrologists who could do all the analytical work? Now, we have recently published a paper on the role of retired pediatric professors, and our findings of a survey in 28 countries showed that retired professors of pediatrics play only a marginal role in the academic life of university children's hospitals of the majority of countries. This lack of integration contrasts with the potentials of retired professors concerning the knowledge and experience in supporting child healthcare services and in developing strategies for coping with the crisis of child healthcare in Europe. For further information, please read the book on the human capital of age, which will be published later this year by Natale De Santo. How about creating an ESPN working group on ESPN congresses and including retired professors of pediatric nephrology? I stop. So, my conclusion is the retrospective analysis of all presentations allows a better understanding of the quantitative-qualitative development, and it may identify national idiosyncrasies, scientific zeitgeist, the roles of diagnostic therapeutic methods, archaeological footprints and odysseys, nephrological strengths and weaknesses, and the most modes of organizing scientific programs of congresses and teaching and training methods. Thank you very much for your attention. I couldn't do it faster.